Yeah. But anyway, get on with the tiny book. It's the tiny. Do you have a theme tune? Tiny book.
We do. A friend of ours wrote it. We're quite fond of it. I think actually, potentially over fond. I don't know, but
yeah. I think you're going to have to kind of hum it.
Should we just, for the purpose of the recording, insert the theme tune here, right?
Just... No.
Apparently, we're not allowed to do that.
Okay.
No.
King Elite has decreed, right?
Yeah. I think Nico
copyright reasons.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna have to delegate that to my musical colleague. That's
I've got this. Edit in our theme song. That's how it goes. A bit like that.
That's good. Like that. Yeah, it's not bad.
Brilliant. That was a beautiful moment.
That was wonderful.
So I've got a question about this, because normally, through the magic of editing, we remove all of the bits where we stumble over words and our tongues sort of loll out of our mouths whilst we try and tell our stories. So, obviously we're doing this live, so we might actually have to just try and get it in one take, or
let's go.
What do you think? Because Nico does it all the time, but I take like I normally make at least between 3 and 7 errors. So
here's what I think. I mean, when I came on the show, what you guys said was like, if you make a mistake, pause and then repeat the line again correctly, and we'll just edit it afterwards. I think we just do that, and the live people get to hear us fuck up.
Yes.
How does that sound? So it's a special Easter egg for those. Yeah, it's an Easter egg for the people who were good enough to turn up, and the poor sods who only listen to the download will just think we're perfect at reading. And I'll never tell.
I love it. Would anybody like to go first?
I can if you want. No, I don't know if that's normal for the guests to go.
Shouldn't we do it like a kit sandwich?
I should be doing though.
We can do it traditionally.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it's host guest host is how we would describe it.
Yeah.
Because if we keep calling it a sandwich, he's brave, a brave boy.
I like it.
Yeah. So we're going.
I mean,
Scott, for the purpose of this conversation, the Tiny Bookcase Boys are the hosts, not the guests. This is where crossover episodes fuck everything up. Sorry.
Yeah, the demons are inside us. We are the hosts.
Yeah.
The phone calls coming from inside the house. Kaiser Soze was really... No, I'm not going to spoil that for anyone who hasn't. Anyway, carry on.
Lovely jubbly. Well, what we normally do is we read a story, we discuss the story, we read, we discuss, we read, we discuss. We also try and limit, during that discussion part, what you've done in your story if you've yet to read. Because it gives little spoilers for what you're about to read. So just bear that in mind. But should we give it a go?
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Frown. They had found the old man affecting prayer whilst knelt at the feet of his father. The dozen functionaries at the edges of the Gorgon shrine stood apart from him patiently, unwilling to disturb their king. Warm rain darkened the marble steps beyond the shrine's columns, and each of the functionaries took care that the skirts of their long tunics were not being soaked as they waited. It was a private place, and many of them took the opportunity to absorb all they saw in the heart of their royal family's secret. The curse of the two kings, one of war and one of peace, was what ensured the prosperity of their island, but few had ever seen both together. The statue of the old man's father stood across from a plinth which held the Gorgon's head. The rot of time had stolen most of the features from the face, but its glossy milk-white eyes remained fixed in their sockets. The old man appeared content to let his subjects wait, and seemed lost in thought. His hands, frozen into weak claws, bobbed in the air before him, as though he conducted internal rhetoric. The statue of his father was tall, and made taller still by the stone plumes on its helmet. His sandal-encased feet were set apart, and the achromatic muscles of his legs showed how keenly his balance was held. A round shield hung from his left arm, and the shaft of a thick spear was grasped in the fingers of his right hand. His chest, packed with corded muscle and scar tissue, was broad, and so like to life that it seemed as though if you looked for long enough, you would be able to count the beats of his heart. The old king ceased the movement of his hands and stared up at the face within the plumed helmet. That stony visage was fixed towards the eastern horizon, and the heavier brow above was furrowed in thought. A pregnant hush emanated from him, and the functionaries, sensing they would be called upon soon, stood straighter. Each of them carried with her a case of scrolls. The important figures and reports contained within them had been meticulously gathered from all corners of the realm. That census, the third of the old man's long reign, had taken a year to gather, and it was widely thought it would be his last. The old man finally broke the silence. My grandfather told me that it is a simple thing to change the world with a spear, and far harder to force it to remain the same with a pen. But as I approach the end of my life, there is one question which gnaws at me. What do we mean by peace? He asked the room, and one bureaucrat, her skin burnished by time spent on the southern coast, replied promptly. Wisdom tells us that peace is happiness, and all men crave happiness. A learned answer. If that is true, why isn't our natural state to strive for it? Instead, we must consign the best of us to stone as protection from the alternative. It is a strange feeling to yearn for conflict after 70 years of peace. But I put it to you that rather than peace over war, we have come to mean preservation over innovation. Nothing new flourishes under my hand, as all I do is hold on to what the past has given us. Perhaps under his hand, we may look forwards once again. The old man, forcing his fingers to uncurl, held on to the statue for support as he struggled to his feet. The functionaries gasped, with many staring at the point of contact where papyrus flesh met smooth marble. Nothing happened. The old man's brow wrinkled as consternation filled him. He removed his hand and then placed it again on his father's chest. Some of the functionaries winced, anticipating the turmoil that would come from their king's decision. It had no effect. The old man's eyes filled with tears as he turned to stare at the Gorgon's head. When they followed his gaze, they saw the large milk-white orbs had dimmed until they were black shadows within the monstrous skull. Alas, whispered their last king. That evening, when the blossom married the scent left behind by the rain, the old man died. His functionaries continued to oversee the land, with generations following generations, until peace was snatched from them by a people they could not conceive of, men who wore armor and held no respect for learned wisdom. Those people, in their turn, passed from the world when new cultures and ideas pushed them from history. And on the world moved, seemingly spinning faster and faster as the shrine's stone shrank into the earth. The statue watched the sun rise up from the horizon 100,000 times before it was plucked carefully from the ground, which had gradually begun to swallow it. The dust of time was brushed from the king's face as he was moved from the land he might have ruled again. He stands now amongst 100 other figures of stone from civilizations which lost themselves trying to preserve their pasts. Tides of people he would not recognize stream past him every day, and instead of the horizon, he frowns at a room of cryptic statuary. The sign by his sandals reads simply, "Do not touch."
Oh, well, lovely that.
That's a superb last line. I got to tell you, man. Really, really good. Oh.
I like that a lot. That was lovely. Really well read.
Yeah.
I did think at the beginning that it was going to be a prequel to Ozymandias of Egypt.
So did I. Ozymandias was in my head the whole. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Which is and I wondered when later on when you were referring to people coming who had armor, was it you have like me been watching documentaries about the sea people who laid waste to sort of Bronze Age Europe, Egypt.
I'm aware of the sea peoples. We still don't know who they were, right? They're just a mystery lost.
I think they've a rough idea of who they probably were.
Right. Okay.
It's Atlantis, isn't it?
Yeah, Atlantis. But the more you read into them, the more it kind of seems to be like over-egged. It was more gradual. that
Right.
you get the image of. But it's fascinating. But I have one big complaint, which
Go for
is using words that I don't know what they mean is actually illegal. So, so you're going to have to change achromatic muscles. I'm not having that because I had to go and look it up.
I just want to say it's illegal in RJ, but you did score 10 kit points for that. So
Excellent.
yeah,
Excellent.
bear that in
If we're
mind.
getting rid of
Fantastic,
words, the other ones. If you're getting rid of words, the other ones don't know. What's a statue? Can you?
Oh dear.
I'd say something I really liked about it. It's a lot of the language you described, the people, was very evocative of a bunch of different ancient cultures without ever specifically nailing it anywhere.
Yeah.
Which does
That was
help,
smart.
like, hit that lost culture vibe. Like I joked about Atlantis, but this idea of a people who they have a lot of hallmarks of that time without it being specifically Greek or Roman or any place that you could recognize from the text. That's cool. I like that a lot.
Thank you.
That was really good.
Can I ask a bit about like what your chain of logic was? I mean, firstly, because we selected this prompt only like a week ago, right? So you've written this in like the last sort of 10 days or so. So what was how did you get to that idea, if you can remember?
Well, yeah, RJ was talking earlier about how he's just got the image of that salesman in his head. It was the first thing that popped into my head was this, these beautiful sculptures from civilizations that have just passed, and they often have these kind of very martial frowns and steely eyes and all this kind of thing. And it just I could just sort of see it. I had the idea for more of a fantastical culture where they flipped the kings earlier, and this felt like an interesting area to insert that. And also, I've been sort of reading around the topic of that whole like preservation versus innovation side of thing. That's coming more from the sort of non-fiction stuff that I engage with. So yeah, it just sort of all came together really. It's that although you gave the prompts about 10 days ago, we Nico and I both wrote for something during the week as well. So this has actually been only a few days in the making, and it's as with most things, when you sort of give it the first bash, I don't think I'm 100% happy with it, but I am reasonably pleased with it. And sometimes you write one that you know that you would have enjoyed to hear, and this is one of those for me. So
I'm also very pleased in hindsight that you've not invented the Ozymandias expanded universe.
Alan Moore did that a long time ago.
That's true story. I think the other thing I want to say is like I think one of the things I really enjoyed about it, I always like really short stories that take place over like a massive span of time. There's something inherently kind of fun about that, and I really love how in that last sort of, I guess last two paragraphs, maybe obviously I can't see it on the page, but I'm guessing last two paragraphs, maybe three at the most, you just suddenly like telescope time and we have centuries going past. I thought that was great. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you. I wasn't sure whether that was going to be too cheap to have him in a museum, but I couldn't shy away from the do not touch line, so I had to do it.
I love it. No, I love it. I mean, for me, kind of because it speaks to that's, I still get angry about the contents of the British Museum and just like this stuff, like, you know what I mean? You just go and look at it like, hang on a minute. who actually said it was okay for us to just go in and take all this shit, So, no, I really like it. I think it really kind of, and also it's like, it's interesting for me. It's an interesting twist on the theme of like preservation versus innovation, because it's like, on the one hand, you could look at that and say, well, the more innovative culture ended up getting it, but there's also, for me, seeing. I mean, I know you didn't necessarily mean it was in the British Museum, but obviously that's the context that came to my mind. Thinking about like, well, yeah, but surely, but that's the way it looks from our perspective in 2024. But in 100 years' time, it's almost certainly not going to look like that. And our culture is going to look very different, whatever's left of it, and the global culture is going to look very different. And yeah, so I quite like that as well, because there was a kind of implied. It's that thing about like, because one of the things I'm like obsessed by is the illusion that we create of stability within societies, when societies are incredibly fragile, fragmentary, broken, that fall apart at like, really the slightest provocation. And yet we think of them as these real physical impervious structures, right?
Absolutely, and it's not possible to be aware that you are peaking or you have
Right,
peaked, isn't it?
right.
It's
Yeah.
Oh yeah, who'd have them,
Yeah, good stuff.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, at this point in the podcast, we would do something sort of very well thought out and planned. And Sieg, have you been saying it? Well,
Sieg, yeah,
Sieg
that's right.
neatly
Thank you
into the
for
next
using
part.
the correct pronunciation. That was
Well, it's an honour, sir.
Thank you. It was lovely to hang out with you, Scott.
Yeah. Before you leave, Scott, can I just ask at any point while I was away, did Kit fire you? Oh,
That's true. Yeah, he did. Well, I did. To be fair, I did fire Scott in absentia when he didn't turn up for the season finale, but he wouldn't know about that because he wasn't there.
Sorry.
Another shooting attempt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously?
What?
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
While he was playing golf. Yeah. I mean, Jesus Christ. See you, Scott.
See you in a fortnight, Scott.
On that bombshell.
Yeah.
I mean, that's completely fucked the Sieg.
That's Scott for you. There's a
Right.
reason he gets fired as often as he does.
Yeah, I think we should fire him now.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
We're
we
gonna
should
have
do
to-
what Jack Black did, right? We should just abandon him for making a Donald Trump joke because clearly we don't condone
Yeah.
political violence of any kind.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to ruin the chances of me being respected in the Minecraft movie. I'm disassociating from my best friend of 30 years.
Won't
Yeah.
somebody
Let's go,
think of
baby.
won't somebody think of Borderlands box office? Oh wait, never mind.
So yeah, Kit, if you could see me in my office, you're making a story today. So
Indeed. Okay. So Frown, and this is, I have to say this because she made me say it, but it's true. From an idea by Kit Power and Kiddo Power.
Is that allowed?
I'll find out afterwards. I think we lost him. No, kid. I ain't got a single fucking clue what's going on. I mean, I knew something weren't right when I got in that pub, but oh, hey, it's okay. Come here. It's all right. I'm smelly, but I'm safe. Take a hug. Ooh. There you go. Let it out quiet, okay? Let it out quiet. There you go. Bloody hell, kid. You can run fast for... How old are you? 13? No, I believe you. It's just... No offence. You're a bit short for... No? Okay, sure. Sorry. Fine. Anyway, you got some moves. I know soldiers arrived the way you took off. I think it was the barman who called them in. I saw him on the phone just after taking my food order. He had that same shit-eating grin as the others, so I couldn't tell what he was saying, but... Okay, kid, look. I know this is tough, but I have to ask you some questions, okay? Those people you came in with, were they your family? Okay? Sorry. I have to ask. Hey, listen. We've got to try and make sense of this, okay? Because you all look normal when you came in. Is that so? Yeah, that's what I thought. In fact, it was your lot turning up first clued me in that something was wrong. Or rather, what was wrong. Me? I'm from... Well, we ran past my boat on our way down here, actually. I live on a canal. Have done for a few years now. I had a late start and fancied a late cooked breakfast, and I heard they do a good one at the plough, so I don't know. I don't listen to the news, sorry. Anyway, well, you saw not too many people in there that time of day, more staff than customers, so I didn't really notice. Anyway, bloody service industry, people are supposed to be cheerful, ain't they? Smiling and that, so I didn't think nothing of it till your lot came in, and then it clicked. All that hiking gear, sweaty face, no offence, you all look pissed off and thirsty. Empty water bottles, I remember seeing that, thinking you'd not packed enough, hadn't reckoned with the heat of the day. You'd had a row, hadn't you? Oh, your sister. Yeah, I had a kid sister, I know, and that can... Oh, hey, sorry. It's okay, come on. I'm sorry, I really am, but we've got to figure it out. I saw you all come in, all red-faced and scowling, and that's when it clicked. Everyone else had that same fixed grin, like... Right! Like Smilex! Like the Joker had come to MK on holiday from Gotham or some shit, but they were all still talking normally, right? Do you remember? Okay, look. Let me tell it as best as I can remember. You can just tell me where I go wrong. Maybe we can get it to click. I was sipping my pint, looking at you lot, then around the bar, and that's when I saw it. Like you say, Smilex all round. Otherwise, they were acting normally. Except... No, they weren't, were they? That old boy at the bar, clearly irregular, talking about his arthritis with a barman, but he was talking about saying it was a blessing, really, because it had made him appreciate what he'd had before, and the barman was agreeing and talking about how he'd realised that morning that it was a good thing he'd lost his dog a couple of weeks ago, because... No, I can't remember, because then it was all about you and your sister, and she was losing her shit about a stick, right? Something she picked up on a walk, and you'd, what, broken it? Sure, I believe you. It was an accident. I wasn't... Come on, mate. I know, but we've got to do this, okay? Stick with it, all right? She started in, no, hang on. You'd already ordered, right? Because you had a bottle of Coke, pints for Mum and Dad, your sister a lemonade, and glasses of tap water all round, right? You were clearly all thirsty, looked like you've been walking a while, and it is unseasonably warm again, isn't it? I'm sorry. I'm trying to get it straight in my head. It's important because you were normal when you came in, and you're still normal. So that's... Oh... Hang on. You sat, you ordered, drinks came, then your sister starts in, you fire back, Mum and Dad start weighing in, Dad's starting on sis, then Mum at Dad about you. No, I have to. I'm sorry, I'm onto something. I think you're all kicking off, then it was your mum first, right? Mid-sentence, shifting completely, anger falling away, the grin rising, smoothing it over, then a few seconds later... Dad, look, I know, it's hard, I'm sorry, but your sister stayed normal for a bit longer, right? Getting madder because they were suddenly talking about how okay everything was, how it was all for the best anyway, and she was furious because they were ignoring her anger. Her voice cracked, and then... Yeah, I think that was it. You were slurping on your bottle of Coke, staring at your parents, ignoring her, or trying to, and then she started to change too, right after... Kid, did you drink any of that tap water? Are you sure? Not a drop? No, right, I remember. The water filled your glass. It was still there when the soldiers arrived. The other three had all been drained, but yours... And you've been on bottled water on the hike, right? So... Fuck. Sorry, kid, but I mean, blimey. Smilex in the water supply. Nah, kid, we did the right thing. No question. I have no idea what's going on, but those soldiers meant business. And they weren't smiling either. Okay. So look, let's give it a couple of minutes and then head back to the boat, okay? It's my first time this far down the canal, so they won't know where I came from. I topped up my water a couple of days ago, so it must be safe to drink, or I'd be grinning like a twat already. We need to get some more information, find out if this is local, or... Well, just get some more info. No, I don't have Wi-Fi. Sorry. But I've got a radio. I'll show you how it works. Well, look, it's up to you, kid. You can go back or you can go home. It's up to you. But if you do, I'm going to ask you to wait here and give me a few hours head start, all right? Because I think if you do go back, you'll be one of those smilers in no time at all, and then you'll tell the soldiers whatever they want to know, which isn't much, but I'd appreciate a head start, so... No? Good lad. Okay. You know what? Let's just go. I don't think they're lying in wait. Likely they're still moving down the towpath. We should be fine. As long as we grin, I think we should be fine. Ready to turn that frown upside down.
Great concept. Really
How
good.
deeply unnerving.
Yeah, that was very unsettling.
Yeah, that upset me, and not just because you somehow reached into my mind and stole the phrase I wanted to use.
You know how hard it was keeping my mouth shut, RJ, when you were talking about that? Thinking, like, that's literally the punchline, you bastard. You've literally ruined the punchline of my own fucking story.
Yeah, but no. But it was really... I didn't like it for the same reason I have not liked many of your stories.
Don't worry, RJ. Ben will confirm that I didn't go with my first concept, which was literally someone taking people's faces off and putting them on the other way to turn their frowns upside down. So there's something in the water, kids.
Clearly.
Yeah, there is. But I mean, I like the format. I love one-sided conversations
Yes.
as stories. I think it's really hard to pull off, and you did. Which
So you
is
say
I agree.
you say the Wayne was involved. How was this? What was the case?
Oh well, so I got the list of prompts through, and I stared at them for about 20 minutes, and I went, "Kiddo," because I was just my fucking brain couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And we're looking at them, and after she looked at them for 2 minutes with me, I said, "It's got to be Frown, right?" She was like, "Yeah," and I was like, "Okay, good." I was like, "Okay, but what's the actual story though?" And she was like, "Well," so I said, "Where I've got to is like." Initially where I got to was like dystopian future, and I was thinking about climate collapse, and I was thinking about how might a society try and hang on if it's not going to go down the children and men route. And I thought something in the water supply that makes people docile, that makes them smile, that makes them just accepting of whatever's going on. And then the frown becomes a symbol of the resistance, right? If you have the capacity to frown, that means that you've not been drugged. That means that you're part of the resistance. Yeah. So then the act of frowning becomes a thing about communication, and it becomes, But then she was like, "Oh yeah," but then I think she came up with the water supply idea. Anyway, we kicked it about, me and her, a little bit, and then she said, "Right, you got to give me partial credit now because I helped." And I was like, "Yeah, you did." So I will.
Well done, kiddo.
Yeah, she's honest to God, we do that shit all the time. It's a little bit like she's working on a novel at the moment, and every now and then she'll come and she'll be like, "I don't know what I'm doing. Can you?" And we'll just talk it through. And I mean, she normally doesn't need my help. She just needs to articulate out loud. But I'll do the same thing. Millionaire's Day, she really helped me out with the finale on that one. Like, I had all these threads colliding, and I needed to map a bit of action, and it was really like the pieces just had to slot together perfectly. And it was about a map of the action, but also which point of view I needed for each bit of that, each beat of the action.
Yeah.
And we just did it over like just after breakfast on a weekend. We just sat and talked about it, and we, within about an hour, I had it mapped out. She's just so great.
I think there's few better feelings than recognizing that you've just broke the story. Like, you actually nailed it. You know where you're going with it. That's because it's quite easy to just be kicking ideas around, but when you just feel it that it's right. And it's really special when you can do that with other people. I know Nico and I often do bits and pieces of writers' rooming, and it's always very rewarding.
It's magical. I mean, so Kiddo and I thrashed out the dystopian future and the frown as the resistance, and she gave me a few other ideas and pointings. But then when I came to write it, I realized the basic problem I had was that, like, that was at least a fucking novella. I had 1,200 words. So then it was figuring out. I mean, it was very mechanical, actually. It was like, okay, do first person because you're going to read it out loud, and first person's easier to read out loud. So therefore, it's a character piece. Find the voice. And the last one I did with you guys, it was a very kind of middle class voice. So I went for a kind of working class voice this time. We just had a canal boat holiday. So that had been in my mind. And I thought, go to ground zero. So forget all of the massive dystopian future. Like, just imagine that it's day one. And it's going to be a bit bumpy on day one, right? So, yeah. And then everything else just happened the way it had to, right? Like, I needed the kid for the guy to be talking to, so the kid had to somehow be immune. Why was he immune? Well, the hiking and it just, that just all kind of slotted into place behind it, really.
I just generally really enjoy. So you've already mentioned the one-sided conversation, and I think that works as a tool, doesn't it? Because you're forcing the reader to plunge at the other side of that conversation, and they're all of a sudden they're working with you. But I also really enjoyed this clawing towards the sanity of recollection angle that you went for as well. Trying to piece together, because we've all sort of done that after a night out or something, haven't you? Where you're just trying to, and in this case, there's actual stakes. And I really enjoyed that. And the smiles and the unseasonably warm weather, it just worked. I have just rewatched Children of Men as well, so you fully nailed that vibe with the sort of slightly dystopic, soldiers everywhere, something in the water kind of vibe. Oh, yeah, I like that one. That's going to stick with me.
Thank you.
Just to throw a little thing on it, I really like the kind of depression parable that goes along with this as well. This ability to, as someone who is Frowner being able to blend into this sort of homogenized society where everyone seems to be smiling all the time. Maybe that's just my read on it because I'm a miserable git, but that there's something in there for that. I don't know if it was intentional, although the writerly response is to say yes, isn't it?
Well, I'll be as honest as I can be and still be a writer. I mean, not directly, but what I will say was in my mind was this thing about like toxic positivity.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot, particularly in relation to climate change, where I think like I understand all the people who are involved in it saying like, well, no, you have to, because if you tell people what's really going on, it's so awful that they'll just switch off. And that may well be true, but there's a part of me that's like, really? How well's bullshitting worked out for us so far? So, I'm always in two minds about that. And I think that was certainly part of my undercurrent of my thinking when I was working on it. So yeah, not directly. But the other thing that you made me think of there was this incredible experiment that they ran. I'll try to make this quick as possible. There's this incredible experiment that they did a few years ago where they had this video game and they sat a bunch of people with depression and a bunch of quote unquote normal people with this game. And you play the game for 20 minutes, and the first time you play it, you get 20 points, and the second time you play it, you get 200 points. And it doesn't matter what you do, what you click on, what you figure out. And all the normies at the end of the second round were like, yeah, I was definitely getting the hang of that. I was definitely working this out. I definitely felt like I was beginning to understand the game. And all the depressives were like, it didn't make any difference what I did. I got the same score. And there was this whole thing about like, there is a sense that maybe people with depression, certainly in certain aspects, are seeing the world in a clearer way than people who are quote unquote well adjusted. And that is something that bothers me and I think about a lot. So I'm sure that was ticking away in the background as well. Is that a dig at me? Yeah. Yes, it is, RJ. And I'm glad you noticed.
I'd just like to say I was so vexed by how joyous Kit was that I ran into a wall trying to write a story that I have actually done the homework while we've been podcasting.
Oh, can we now be vexed about the fact that means you haven't been paying full attention to us? We've made the effort to come on.
You caught. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is exactly what I'm talking about. While you were reading your story, Kit, that you wrote and did the homework, I wasn't really listening because I was writing my own shit.
Can we just point out that I watch television and write at the same time? I can do two. I've got 2 ears.
Oh.
That's
Got
I
2
can do
ears.
that. Yeah.
There's no need to show off. Mr. 2 ears.
Oh, the king of Leeds with his hoity-toity second ear.
Who needs both to hold the crown up?
That's true, actually.
That is true.
It's true. It's true.
I never bloody voted for him.
You don't vote for a king. You get it forced on you. One thing I liked is that after reading the story, Kit mentioned he'd gone for a working class voice after he'd come back off his boating holiday.
My canal boat holiday, yeah. I know.
Don't spoil it with the canal boat. I just like to imagine you on a yacht. I think I'll try and be one of the working class when I write this.
It is boats, isn't it? Boats they live on.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. I mean, it is, but like when you do the canal boat thing, there are people who live on the canal, and most of those people are working class. Like seriously, I mean, like when I say working class, I mean like sort of subsistence level working class, because it's a very, very cheap way to live.
Yeah, and those boats are cold.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the other reason that it's there is because the novel that I'm going to be writing next is going to feature. The canals are an absolutely key part of the story, so that's part of why I did the holiday and canal boats, and the fact that they're under the radar is going to be really relevant because that's another dystopian future, although it's a different dystopia to this one. But yeah, so. It's not actually a prequel to my next novel, but it's adjacent. So I got to play in that sandpit a little bit. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. And mostly thank you for giving me a chance to write some fucking fiction, which I haven't been able to do for like weeks. It was real fun.
You're very welcome, love.
Yeah, you do not need permission to do that. Just go for it, man.
Yeah, but
just email us now and then and ask for a prompt.
There is an hours in a day. No, I hear you. There's an hours in a day crunch at the moment, which is pretty severe. But I know if I'm doing it for Writeopolis, then
Yeah, I get you. Right, well, I think it's time for us to hit the third one. Nico's been
Oh,
dead
yeah,
for
shit.
quite
I
long
did
enough, I think.
this.
Yeah.
Forgot about my one. Okay. Frown. We had to paint the feature wall brown. An exercise I was not enthralled about, mostly due to its existing brownness. I'd been extremely confident some 4 years prior when I'd started drilling holes to hang pictures up. I don't think we're allowed. A wise sentiment from my wife. She'd been my girlfriend at the time, but the burning fuse on the ring box was near its end even then. I wanted to seem masculine, a problem solver, the sort of man who says, bugger the rules, we can have fireworks at the park if we want. I'm not any of those things. But she'd fallen in love with a piece of art, and I wasn't going to let some landlord's feelings on tiny apertures in the wall stop her from seeing it every day. If I was wiser, which I might be now after things get explained to me, I'd have known it was how doggedly determined I was to hang the painting that had filled her with love for me. Not, in fact, the rapid-fire double whiz of the drill I'd performed. I bought a belt holster for it. I felt like John Wayne and looked like a dick. The point is, I hung it. Quite badly, which meant a second hole. But once it was up, it looked lonely. So over time, more pictures went up around it. Cocktails clinking against a Mauritius sunset. A Fun Run medal held aloft, its cheap bronze outshone by my smile. Us, dressed to the nines, a city skyline behind us and our rings glinting so new in the midday light. A lot of the pictures taken later that day we were too sloshed in to hang up, but we keep them in a big book. The newest edition, soft skin and grabby little hands reaching for the smartphone that's taking the picture. A day old and you're already giving her a screen? The wife had scolded. Emily's glorious in that picture. I only hung it a couple of months ago and now it's come down and been bubble wrapped. All the pictures are down and in boxes. I've scribbled words like fragile and breakable on the side in biro. We went over the lines a load of times because it wasn't actually showing up. I should have got a marker. I'm sure one day, like all our memories, it'll be something we look back on fondly. But right now, it is a point of contention in the war of the Brown Wall. She took the time to check the contract, and it said the flat had to be returned in as close a state to the one it was rented in as possible, minus allowable wear and tear. I thought a few holes in the wall could come under that. Well, I didn't. I knew I was in the wrong, but I didn't want to fix the wall. I just wanted to move. But we couldn't afford to lose the deposit, and what if they said each hole was £100 to fix? That first painting would be £200 on its own. So I conceded, and I took the first step by buying some filler material, and it stuck to everything apart from the wall. There were crumbs of it in the turn-ups on my shorts for ages after I did it. But I watched a video and discovered you had to sort of pile it on, then sand it down, and then paint it. So I just followed the video, and now I had to paint it. I found in the outside cupboard that we never used because it was a nightclub for spiders and woodlice what we believe may have been the tin used to paint it originally. There was an excessive amount of brown paint sloshed all over it, obscuring almost all of the detail. We had to make some decisions in order to proceed. Did paint go off? We were completely unsure. What if, we mused, someone had in fact trapped something in the tin, like an evil genie or a big spider? It didn't matter, because we had to paint the wall, and this was probably wall paint, so we opened it up with some considerable effort. A sloping, solid path of paint long past its best of times greeted us. Well, bugger was my exact terminology, I believe. I suggested that we could perhaps just buy a different brown paint, but my wife was adamant that they would know it was different. It's just sort of brown, how would they know? I would know. I conceded that she probably would, so we had to try and match the brown. While she sent a picture of the wall to her friends and asked what they would call the colour, I tried to clean the tin enough to read it. The ancient details came away as I chipped off paint, so I chose to work with what I had. There was round, which presumably was part of the word brown, and some way before it an errant F, with everything that followed obscured. I began wondering how many words could fit into that space. Friendly brown? Fresh brown? Funky brown? I like the funky one best, but the wall wasn't funky, maybe groovy. By the time I got back in, my wife had ordered 11 sampler pots based on her friend's suggestions. Coffee, light coffee, dark coffee, elephant stream, torched meadow. I wondered who was naming these things. Experts, I was told. I'm not an expert, so I kept my mouth shut. I did, however, bring Frown to the table. We got to a search engine and started with brown paint and added every F word we could, one at a time. There were thousands upon thousands of results. We added UK to the end, which narrowed it down according to the digits next to the word results. The 11 samplers all arrived and got tested on a little patch each, and not one of them looked anything like the brown wall. The patchwork horror this wall had become loomed over me. It was turning this move into a nightmare and us into enemies. We really needed each other. She didn't want to leave the wall like this because we'd lose the whole deposit. I'd started to resent the wall and thinking of it as that bastard. So I started saying, don't worry, love, we just need to frown at it. In a silly, deep voice with an exaggerated face I think 90s Jim Carrey would have been proud of. She started joining in, and soon we were passing each other in the hallway with boxes saying, Frown, Frown. And the magic worked. And suddenly it was in the lexicon of our love. We started laughing about the wall. I bought a tin of matte brown warm home paint. It was extremely cheap and it covered everything nicely. Once it was dry, you couldn't even tell I'd drilled holes in it. Lovely Frown, she said. She looked at our handiwork one last time. Oh, thank you, my dear. Not a bad frown you've got on yourself either. Emily made a noise. She wasn't up to words yet. Not even Frown. I handed the keys to the young man who'd come from the estate agents to get them and check everything. We walked through the flat, now emptied of all our memories, and I tensed as he passed bits of carpet worn thin by socks going back and forth on sleepless nights. The bit of ceiling that had gone grey when upstairs had a leak. The chipped kitchen tile when she dropped a casserole dish in shock because I'd summoned the courage to ask the question. Lovely space, this. Feature was a bit old-fashioned. I'm sure you'll be glad to see the back of that, sir. I should reckon they'll want to paint that a different colour. He pulled me from my memories before the monument to Frown. I felt a hand squeeze mine and my wife said, You should paint it Lover's Frown. It was perfect. She's an evil genius. It sounded just like a real paint name. The young man even scribbled something down. Lover's Frown, brilliant suggestion. I'll pass that on. Thank you for your time. That's the end of the checks. You can go now if you like. The door clicked shut behind us, and I left that flat and all of its walls behind me. Frown, I said to no one in particular, and smiled.
It's just fucking delightful, that, isn't it? I really like
Yeah.
Right.
There was a bit of the Alan Bennett about it.
Well, I can do it as Alan Bennett if you'd like. Do you have any feedback for me, for poor Alan?
Don't feel any pressure at all to keep doing that.
It was actually quite uncomfortable for me because we're going through this massive building project. and quite regularly my other half comes in and shows me 6 different greens that I cannot tell the difference between. And she can. I'm just like, I don't know. That one. But I enjoyed that.
I really liked it. I think you win with line of the evening with the I looked like John Wayne and felt like a I felt like John Wayne and looked like a what was the word you used?
Look like a dick. Yeah.
Looked like a dick. That was that should be on a t-shirt with a picture of a guy with a holster with his drill in the holster. That was just perfect.
I'm glad you liked it.
No,
is it partly autobiographical?
There are elements, certainly.
Yeah. And weird that you should mention a ceiling with a water leak because that's what caused our ceiling to fall in. So,
That is weird.
Yeah, there's been a lot of attacking me on this.
Tried, I can't thank you enough again for all of that. No, I really enjoyed it. It's an interesting thing. I think I'm such a horror writer and horror reader at this point. My brain was tuned in. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah.
And it could have done, right? There were a couple of moments there I thought about, with the pictures coming off the wall. I was like, are we getting into like,
Yeah. And the old tin.
Baby shoes for sale, never used. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and there's also stuff around the move. Like, I think it's a really interesting thing about like the reality of, which is a reality for millions of people right now, the reality of living in rented accommodation where you think you're in your home, but actually you can be given whatever it is, like 6 months notice, and that's it. You just got to fucking go, right? And that's like I'm sorry, this is just the way my brain works, but that's just like an everyday horror of existence that we don't even think of as a horror. It's just life, right?
It's quite bold in that instance to then just hold on to the loving nature of the relationship in there, isn't
absolutely.
it? It's, the idea of the lexicon of the love as well. I really enjoyed that because not necessarily just in romantic relationships, but everyone's got a shorthand with their sort of besties or whatever, and it's just such a nice thing, and I felt like you really captured it, and it was nice that was the crux of the story.
Actually,
also, Torched Meadow, great name.
I saw a linguist talk about this once. It was only in a short video explaining it, but talking about the fact that all relationships, not just romantic relationships, but if you have a relationship with a person for long enough, you'll start to develop a personalized lexical field, and essentially they can be classified as their own languages beyond a certain point. And then if you stop being friends with that person, a language dies every time. And it's fascinating that in these kind of like micro languages are being born and dying constantly. So there's a huge turnover of it, but it's not big enough to affect sort of a society. But then it can become multi-generational. So, if you marry someone and you've got a load of things that you say, and then your children pick up on them, and then your children start saying things and you pick up on them, and it means that you can then have a sort of bloodline linked lexicography. It's fantastic.
You know what you remind me of? There's a gag in, I think it's season 3 of West Wing, where someone says something to Sam Seaborn, and Sam says, "Oh, stop being such a hulalia," and everyone just stares at him. And after about 5 seconds, he says, "Might not be a thing. Might just be something my mum used to say."
Huh. It's true, but it's true. Like my little cousin, when we were tiny, she said "bicket" once instead of "biscuit."
Yeah.
Which led to my grandmother, till the day she died, saying "bicket" instead of "biscuit."
Yeah.
It's just, it's lovely. I think language is such a precious thing that it's well, sometimes on huge expansive ways, language can get brutalized, and people start saying things like "spenny" instead of "expensive," and then I want to drown them in soup. there are things, there are things that my wife and I say to each other that are like absolute gibberish, that be complete nonsense to other people, but we know what it means, and that is like having your own foreign language. Especially because we're both learning German, so now sometimes it's got bits of German in it.
Nice.
I've been learning German.
Hey, is that good?
Yes, really. I'm really bad at it, and I learned it to go to Germany for the release of the last Bone Chips book with Panini, and found out that actually what you learn on Duolingo absolutely will not help you when you get to Germany. I was like, I've done 2 years of Duolingo. I'm ready. Nope, don't know what anybody's saying. And
to be fair, RJ, if there had been a monkey in the tree, you'd have had that covered. All right, it's not your fault.
Yeah,
there were neither monkeys nor trees in Berlin. That's not on you.
The best thing was, one thing that I remember from school learning German was Ein Hund ist unter ein Tisch. The dog is under the table, and there was a point where we all went for dinner and somebody brought the dog. It was under the table, and I couldn't say it.
My moment has arrived.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
In fact, a thing that is fully in our lexical field, my wife and I, because of Duolingo, is in the early parts of it, whenever it gives you multiple options for a response to a thing, it always says "Milch bitte," which means milk, please. So we just say it to each other all the time. If a German person walked past, they'd think we were insane. But we just say it. We're just constantly saying "milk, please" to each other. How odd.
But
people are weird.
People are weird. It's just in.
Do you want to hear what I ignored Kit's story to write.
Yes.
I'd
Before you do
love
that,
to.
I do need to ask, like, how the fuck did you get that from Frown? Did you just stare at the word Frown for like a million years and then go, wait a minute,
So-
that could be...
If you want a great example of it, I'd have a look at our episode Interference, where I wrote a story
Okay.
called Interference, all about
Right.
gang land ownership.
Got you.
But if I'm struggling with a prompt, what I tend to do is start cracking the word apart and sort of tamesising it. So I was like, what round is like brown? What starts with it? Like Ben was here with me for it. Like we were on mics. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And without Ben's prompting, it's the classic sort of just need to say it out loud thing.
Yep.
I went Funky Brown. Oh shit, I've got a story, and
There
that
it
was
is.
that was it.
It was a beautiful moment.
Nice.
There's actually that's a very good example of an episode. The even better example is the Peacock episode, and I think you can see where this is going.
Okay, yeah. I'll maybe save that one from when kiddo's
So
out of the house.
It's like a pod, right?
Yeah, no, I think we got it, mate. I got to be honest.
The
That
word
wasn't-
unsteamed happens a couple of times.
that,
let's just say
that really wasn't the Da Vinci Code. We got it. We got it. I mean, well played, but we did get it. Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
that
dear.
likely concludes the tiny bookcast.
No, I don't think so. I
No,
think
we've got to let RJ do it.
We've got a late entry.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's really short, so that's a plus.
If it just says "fuck you, Kit," this is an incredible move.
Fuck you, Kit, said the salesman. Turn that frown upside down.
Yeah.
Stop frowning, you bitch.
I'm so tempted just to say that now, but I'm not gonna, because it would be cheating, and I didn't think of that, and I wish I had. But anyway, this is Frown. It's very short. Frown. Oi, love, stop frowning. You'd be pretty if you smiled. Go on, have a go. It won't kill you. He shouted from the top of the scaffold, his attempt to follow her along the street from on high to carp out his banter for his joy, not hers, ruined by a loose scaffold board, which sent him plummeting to the ground from 4 stories up, barely even time to scream. The violence of his landing was hidden from sight by fencing and brightly painted prefab buildings, so that, if he had lived, he did not see her frown become a smile. Boom.
Yeah,
That was
that's
great.
That's
Bit of flash.
absolutely
I
great.
like it.
I've got to be honest. I'm not sure where the 50 salesman fit in, but I liked it. That was good.
I imagine he was on like a billboard in the background. That just sort of
Yeah,
filled
that
me
sounds
in.
about
Yeah.
right. Yeah, very nice.
It was definitely.
Yeah.
Turn her frown upside down.
Yes.
And I think if you had written 1,500 words while we were having a conversation, I would have had a panic attack. So I'm glad it was really short.
I know he did. He just edited it down to that.
Yeah, yeah.
You
He
didn't
threw
hear
away
the
first
two.
draft.
Yeah, the first 2 he rejected. That was the third one where he suddenly went,
Yeah.
"I'll just do something short because I don't want to intimidate
Yeah,
anybody."
I don't want to upset them. I do about 50, I can, if I know exactly what I want to write.
Yeah.
I can do about 1,500 words in an hour.
Yeah, I know you can
That's-
because you're just a fucking psychopath.
Yeah, but I have to. I can also make writing 1,000 words last all day though, and I do have the luxury of time.
Oh no, we all know how to do that, RJ. That's
Yeah,
trust me.
what a skill. Yeah. It's been
That's-
really weird writing this new book because I've absolutely no idea what the story is. I'm making it up as I go along, and I think I should mention this because I think it's worthwhile mentioning. While this is kind of like a write to read podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unusually
As
for Writeopolis, but yeah.
As I was getting iller and my ability to write started to vanish, I was properly panicked. I was like emailing my agent going, I've got contracts and I literally have no ideas. I can't think of anything. So I can't tell you, when I sat down with like a blank bit of paper and I started to write and it came back, and that's how I write. I write with a blank bit of paper and see what happens. And it all started. The amount of relief that I've felt over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks is just indescribable.
Yeah.
So
That must have happened to people with like long COVID and that kind of thing. You would have
Yeah.
thought that there must be some writers out there that have just been robbed of their ability, which is a bad thing.
yeah, because tiredness does that. It just takes it away. It's It's a nightmarish thing.
Oh,
But
I mean, I talked about earlier. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's talked about it publicly, so I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. But Rob Sherman had that when he got COVID in the first wave, and I think it was like 9 months before he could get back to writing. He was getting really scared. Yeah, he was getting really scared. I mean, he's fine now and he's producing again. But yeah, it's bad news. Bad fucking news. So yeah, we're also very glad for you, RJ. He said begrudgingly, but we are.
You can feel the love.
It's never
There's so much
happened
warmth
before.
between the two of you.
There is. It's a beautiful thing. It's
a beautiful twisted thing.
Yeah,
Like a roundabout in Slough, it's a wonder to behold.
Yeah, I met someone who knew Patrick O'Brien, who wrote the Aubrey Maturin books. Master and Commander is based on them. And she said that O'Brien thought of those books as stories about a love affair, and the moments when they play the music are the sex scenes, because they meet up and they play music. And it's very much like that with me and Kit. Except that's why we take the piss. That's like the
that's the music that we make.
Yeah, that's the peak.
True story.
That's the climactic moment.
The climax, if you will.
Yeah.
Can't believe we've been listening to you climax all night. This is wild.
Early and often, my friends. Early and often. That's the secret.
You must be so thirsty.
I am quite thirsty. I'm getting dehydrated. I'm not
There's something in the water.
Luckily, the end of the podcast is approaching. Perhaps not quite fast enough, although I do have an edit function, so that joke may just make it into the live version.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of The Tiny Bookcase.
Remember to subscribe, otherwise you're going to miss out on the future fun.
Also, tell a friend. If you like this episode, link them to it.
We'd be tremendously grateful. You can follow us on Twitter at BookcaseTiny, Facebook at The Tiny Bookcase, and Instagram at BookcaseTiny for updates. Speaking of supporting the podcast, well, magic can only take one so far. The Tiny Bookcase is supported by the generosity of its patrons. Those kind souls have really kept my belly full the last year. Let's cast a spell for them, shall we? For rich ginger tones on their scalp, let us cast the Orangi Hedondo spell for Scott Byrne. And for general fabulousness, why not the Ooh La La, How's Your Mother spell on Matthew McLaren?
How do you come up with that shit, man?